La Leche Restaurant, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, August 15, 2016. 1 in the morning, luxury beachfront dining, bottle service flowing. Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, El Chapo's son, celebrating with 6 friends when 15 armed men in tactical gear stormed through the doors. Diners hit the floor. Gunfire into the ceiling. Pure chaos. Jesús Alfredo's wearing the gold Rolex his father gave him before prison, engraved on the back, "De tu padre." Kidnappers drag him and his brother Iván toward the exit. One of them rips the watch off Jesús's wrist band, snapping gold-hitting tile. 6 Sinaloa Cartel members stuffed into black SUVs, gone in 90 seconds. Restaurant CCTV captures everything. 3 hours later, El Chapo gets word in his New York prison cell. The watch detail, that personal insult, changes everything. In the next 48 hours, 116 people will die across Mexico. You think cartels are about drugs? This is about family. La Leche sat directly on the beach in Puerto Vallarta's Zona Romantica. White tablecloths and ocean views, the kind of place where wealthy tourists and cartel princes mixed without asking questions. Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar turned 29 that night, celebrating with his younger brother Iván and 6 trusted Sinaloa associates. The gold Rolex on his wrist caught candlelight, $50,000 Daytona, gift from his father Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán before his extradition to the United States 7 months earlier. Engraved on the back, "De tu padre El Chapo." At exactly 1 a.m., the front doors exploded inward. 15 men in black tactical gear, faces covered, rifles raised. Professional, fast, coordinated. They'd been watching the restaurant for hours, waiting for the perfect moment. Customers screamed, dropped to the floor. 3 gunshots fired directly into the ceiling, purely for effect, purely for control. The lead kidnapper walked straight to Jesús Alfredo's table, grabbed him by the hair, zip-tied his wrists behind his back in seconds. Another grabbed Iván the same way. Someone ripped the Rolex off Jesús's wrist. The band snapped. Watch hit the tile floor with a metallic crack that echoed through sudden silence. All 8 people at the table were dragged outside, thrown into 3 black Chevrolet SUVs, waiting with engines running. 90 seconds total. Restaurant staff left alive, completely untouched, deliberate. They wanted witnesses. They wanted this story told immediately. The Rolex stayed on the restaurant floor until police arrived 3 hours later. Witnesses aren't accidents, they're warnings. 4:30 in the morning, Metropolitan Correctional Center, Lower Manhattan. Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán slept in a small cell on the 10th floor, maximum security, awaiting trial after his January 2016 extradition from Mexico. His attorney, Eduardo Balarezo, arrived for an emergency consultation, unusual timing, but permitted under attorney-client privilege. They sat separated by bulletproof glass, spoke through phones. Balarezo chose his words carefully. There's been a serious problem with the family business in Vallarta. El Chapo understood instantly. His sons. Details came through in fragments, coded language, kidnapped, restaurant, 15 men, CJNG suspected. Then the detail that changed everything. They took the watch. El Chapo's face remained completely neutral, but his right hand clenched into a fist. The watch wasn't just expensive jewelry, it was a symbol, his explicit approval, his public blessing on Jesús Alfredo's leadership role in the organization. Taking it was calculated humiliation, a deliberate insult designed to diminish his authority. Balarezo had brought a special encrypted phone, approved for this emergency. 3 calls were made from that attorney room over the next hour. Signals bouncing through servers in 4 countries, impossible to trace definitively. By 6 a.m. Mexico time, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, Sinaloa's co-leader, still operating freely across northern Mexico, had received his orders. Clear, specific, devastating. El Chapo hung up the phone, returned to his cell, lay back on his bunk. Prison walls don't stop power. By 9 a.m. on August 15, Jesús Alfredo and Iván Guzmán sat zip-tied to metal chairs in a safe house outside Guadalajara, deep in Jalisco territory. Both had been beaten systematically, not severely, but enough to establish dominance, enough to make the situation clear. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known throughout Mexico as El Mencho, ran the Jalisco New Generation cartel with absolute authority. CJNG had emerged in 2010 from the fragmented remains of the Milenio cartel, growing explosively by 2016 to directly challenge Sinaloa's decades-long dominance across Mexico. El Mencho wanted Sinaloa completely out of Jalisco, Colima, and Michoacán, territories he considered rightfully his through blood and violence. The kidnapping was designed as leverage, a power move to force territorial concessions. On the metal interrogation table between them sat the gold Rolex, blood-stained from where it was violently torn off Jesus's wrist. El Mencho picked it up slowly, turned it over, read the engraving with deliberate care. De tu padre, El Chapo. He understood the symbolic weight, the message it sent. He placed it back down carefully under harsh fluorescent light. "Tell your father," he said directly, to Jesús Alfredo, "we want complete withdrawal from our territories. You have 48 hours." His men had already sent photographs to Sinaloa intermediaries, the Guzman brothers bound and beaten, the watch displayed as proof of capture. El Mencho genuinely believed he was negotiating from strength. But 600 miles north in Sinaloa, El Mayo had already activated response protocols based on El Chapo's explicit prison orders. Negotiations were theater. War was already decided. By noon on August 15th, the Sinaloa Cartel had mobilized over 500 sicarios, hired killers, across 6 Mexican states simultaneously. The response wasn't improvised or reactive, it was pre-planned, just waiting for activation. For months, Sinaloa intelligence operatives had been quietly compiling detailed lists of CJNG members, associates, family connections, addresses, daily routines, vehicle descriptions. Waiting. The kidnapping provided justification. Ismael El Mayo Zambada coordinated operations from a secure compound in Sinaloa state, receiving continuous orders through El Chapo's encrypted attorney network. The watch immediately became a powerful symbol. Anyone who'd touched it, anyone who'd participated in planning the kidnapping, anyone in the operational chain of command was marked for death. Intelligence teams identified over 40 CJNG locations within the first 6 hours. Safe houses, stash houses, distribution points, commanders' family homes. Strike teams assembled quickly, weapons distributed from hidden caches, ammunition loaded. No negotiations would be attempted. El Chapo's order was explicit and absolutely non-negotiable. Make them regret it permanently. This wasn't about rescue operations. This was about punishment, about sending a message that would echo through Mexico's criminal underworld for decades. By 2 p.m., the first Sinaloa teams were moving into tactical positions throughout Guadalajara. They weren't coming to bargain. They weren't coming to trade. They were coming to execute a demonstration of why Sinaloa had remained dominant for 40 years. CJNG had made a fundamental, catastrophic miscalculation. They'd targeted the sons of a man who'd escaped maximum security prisons twice, who'd built a multi-billion-dollar international drug empire from absolute poverty, who'd never in his life forgotten an insult or forgiven a betrayal. War doesn't start with the first shot, it starts with the first order. 6:15 in the evening, August 15th, Guadalajara. A CJNG safe house in the Zapopan district, residential middle-class neighborhood, completely unremarkable from the street. 8 CJNG members inside, mid-level soldiers rotating routine guard duty, playing cards, watching television, eating takeout. At exactly 6:15 p.m., 4 vehicles approached simultaneously from different directions, perfectly synchronized timing. 12 Sinaloa sicarios exited in tight formation, military-style tactical movement, automatic weapons raised and ready. The assault lasted exactly 4 minutes by security camera timestamps. 8 dead, 0 survivors, no witnesses. Sinaloa operatives didn't take money from the safe, didn't take the drugs stacked in the back room, didn't loot anything valuable. This wasn't robbery. This was pure execution, pure message sending. They left a handwritten note pinned to the front door with a knife. Por los hermanos, for the brothers. Then they vanished completely before police could respond. Local authorities arrived 23 minutes later, found bodies, called it in to federal coordinators. By then, news had already reached El Mencho's communication network. His people understood immediately this wasn't about negotiation anymore. This was systematic elimination. El Mencho went underground instantly, moving to a backup secure location in rural Jalisco. Urgent messages were sent to the safe house holding the Guzman brothers. Return them immediately, this can still stop. But it couldn't stop. The machine was already running at full speed, unstoppable. By 8 p.m., 2 more CJNG locations had been hit, with identical precision, one in Colima State, one in Tonalá Municipality. 14 more dead in less than 2 hours. Sinaloa teams left the exact same calling card at each site, the same message. CJNG scrambled desperately to mobilize defenses, but they were scattered, disorganized, caught completely unprepared for this level of coordinated violence. The Gold Watch sat untouched on the interrogation table in the safe house, now surrounded by increasingly panicked guards who suddenly understood they were guarding a death sentence. The twist that changed everything, Jesús and Iván still sat bound in that safe house. El Chapo wasn't negotiating for their release. He was making an example that would last decades. Rescue wasn't the goal, revenge was. Through the long night of August 15th into the early morning of August 16th, Sinaloa operated systematically from those prepared lists, proving this response had been planned for months, possibly years. Names, photographs, addresses, vehicle descriptions, family connections, intelligence gathered patiently and systematically, just waiting for proper justification to activate. The kidnapping provided that justification completely. By midnight, the confirmed body count had reached 38. Victims weren't limited to CJNG soldiers. They included logistics coordinators, money launderers, street-level dealers, even family members of mid-level commanders. The targeting was strategic, designed to collapse organizational structure from multiple angles simultaneously. Bodies began appearing in highly public locations throughout Jalisco state, hanging from bridges in Guadalajara, dumped at major intersections in Ciudad Guzman, displayed prominently in plazas in Manzanillo. Each corpse carried an identical note. This is Sinaloa's response. The placement was deliberate, public, visible, impossible for authorities or media to ignore or suppress. CJNG lost 3 crucial plaza bosses, 5 operational cell commanders, and dozens of experienced soldiers in the first 18 hours. Their carefully built network across Jalisco state started fragmenting rapidly as survivors went underground or fled to other regions entirely. The operational precision and detailed intelligence suggested internal betrayal. Someone positioned high inside CJNG had been feeding comprehensive information to Sinaloa intelligence for months, either through coercion or substantial payment. Mexican federal authorities were completely overwhelmed by the sudden explosion of violence. Federal police, state police, even military units deployed to affected areas, but the systematic killings continued regardless. Media outlets reported major cartel war erupted across western Mexico, but insiders who understood the situation knew this was entirely one-sided. CJNG attempted several weak counterattacks, managing to kill 6 Sinaloa associates by dawn on August 16th. Sinaloa responded immediately by executing 20 more identified CJNG members before noon that same day. The brutal mathematics became explicit. Every single Sinaloa death would cost CJNG at least 3, possibly more. The gold Rolex remained on the table at the safe house, and El Mencho's men were now genuinely afraid to touch it. It had transformed from trophy to curse, from leverage to catastrophic liability. People close to the operation said later that the watch represented El Chapo's personal pride more than any multi-ton drug shipment or cash pile ever could. Revenge is a list written in advance. By morning on August 16th, just 24 hours after the kidnapping, 52 people were confirmed dead across 6 Mexican states. Mexican federal authorities convened emergency crisis meetings in Mexico City. President Enrique Peña Nieto's administration faced mounting international pressure as reports spread worldwide of unprecedented mass violence. Military checkpoints went up across Jalisco, Colima, and Michoacán states. It didn't matter. The systematic killings continued in broad daylight, in residential neighborhoods, in busy commercial areas. Sinaloa teams moved with professional tactical precision, hitting identified targets, completing executions, vanishing completely before authorities could respond effectively. The message became unmistakably clear to everyone watching. Law enforcement couldn't stop this, wouldn't stop this. CJNG leadership attempted increasingly desperate counterattacks to stem the bleeding. They killed 4 Sinaloa distributors in Culiacán, assassinated 2 family members of a Sinaloa plaza boss in Mazatlan. Within 6 hours, Sinaloa retaliated by systematically executing 20 identified CJNG associates across 3 different states. The brutal mathematics of violence became absolutely explicit. Touch Sinaloa, lose significantly more than you took. International media coverage intensified dramatically. CNN, BBC, major outlets picked up the story. Headlines screamed Mexico cartel war explodes without understanding the specific personal trigger. The watch stayed hidden in the safe house, having become a symbol of catastrophic strategic miscalculation. CJNG guards watching over the Guzmán brothers understood with growing horror that they were part of something spiraling far beyond anyone's control. El Mencho, moving between secure locations, realized his entire organization was being systematically dismantled in real time. The kidnapping, originally conceived as leverage, as a power move, had become an organizational extinction event. He'd fundamentally miscalculated who he was dealing with. El Chapo wasn't a businessman who'd negotiate territorial arrangements. He was a man who'd clawed his way up from absolute Sinaloa poverty, survived multiple arrest attempts and assassination plots, escaped from maximum security prisons twice, built a multi-billion-dollar international empire through absolute ruthlessness and unwavering control. The watch represented his legacy, his reputation, his family name, and El Mencho had taken it, had stripped it off his son's wrist like taking candy from a child. Some kidnappings aren't strategy, they're suicide. August 16th afternoon. CJNG leadership, what remained functional of it, contacted Sinaloa intermediaries through established back channels. They offered everything available: immediate unconditional return of the Guzmán brothers, formal public apology, complete territorial withdrawal from all contested areas, substantial financial compensation. Sinaloa's counter-demands came back through encrypted messages within hours: return the watch intact, hand over 3 specific CJNG commanders directly involved in planning the kidnapping, complete withdrawal from Jalisco's border regions with Sinaloa territory. El Mencho refused to surrender his commanders. Doing so would constitute admitting total defeat, showing terminal weakness that would destroy whatever authority he had left. By evening, the death toll had reached 89. Bodies continued appearing in public locations across multiple states. The Mexican government deployed additional military units, declared official states of emergency in affected regions. Nothing changed on the ground. Sinaloa hit another 12 identified locations overnight. The operational efficiency suggested not just pre-collected intelligence but active real-time cooperation. Someone positioned high in CJNG was feeding current information continuously, either by force or substantial payment. The twist came through intercepted communications that changed the entire situation. Even if the sons were released immediately, the killing would continue regardless. El Chapo's orders from his New York prison cell were explicit and completely non-negotiable. This wasn't about getting his sons back safely. It was about sending a message that would echo through Mexico's criminal underworld for decades, possibly generations. Touch El Chapo's family, face total organizational annihilation. The gold Rolex sat in the safe house, now representing the enormous price of unchecked ambition. El Mencho had wanted to prove CJNG could directly challenge Sinaloa's 40-year dominance. Instead, he'd triggered a comprehensive demonstration of exactly why Sinaloa had remained dominant through multiple generations, multiple governments, multiple wars. Deals made under sustained gunfire aren't actually deals. Early morning, August 17th, 42 hours after the kidnapping, the body count reached 103. CJNG's entire mid-level organizational structure had effectively collapsed. A commander identified only as Rodrigo in later protected reports, not his real name, identity permanently sealed, made an independent decision that would save lives. His specific cell held the Guzman brothers. He'd watched his organization get systematically decimated for nearly 2 full days. He'd lost close friends, family relatives, trusted colleagues, and for what? Pride, territory, reputation? He contacted a Sinaloa Plaza boss directly, completely bypassing El Mencho's authority. "I'll release them now," he said simply. "We're finished." The exact location came through. Safe house outside Guadalajara, precise GPS coordinates. The watch would be returned first, a clear gesture of complete surrender, of unconditional defeat. Rodrigo understood clearly he was signing his own death warrant with CJNG, but everyone was dying anyway. At least this way, maybe the killing would finally stop. He personally arranged transportation, contacted Sinaloa representatives directly, set the exchange for dawn. The gold Rolex went first, handed carefully to a Sinaloa courier at 5 a.m., engraving perfectly intact. Blood cleaned off completely, message received and understood. Then Jesús Alfredo and Iván were released at 6 a.m. on August 17, exactly 42 hours after being taken, dropped at a secure Sinaloa safe house, beaten and exhausted, but alive and functional. The brothers were debriefed immediately and comprehensively. Who took them, where they were held, who gave orders, who physically touched the watch, names collected meticulously. The list grew. Survival beats loyalty when bodies pile high enough. 6 in the morning, August 17th, 2016. Jesús Alfredo and Iván Guzmán walked slowly into a Sinaloa safe house in Guadalajara's eastern suburbs, finally freed. Bruised faces, zip tie marks visible on wrists, exhausted but alive and conscious. The gold Rolex sat prominently on the table directly in front of them, returned intact, engraving still perfectly visible. "De tu padre, el Chapo, Ismael El Mayo." Zambada's personal representatives conducted an immediate comprehensive debrief. The brothers named everyone they'd seen during 42 hours of captivity. Names, detailed physical descriptions, voices, specific locations, guard schedules. Information flowed immediately north to Sinaloa leadership headquarters, then through carefully encrypted channels to El Chapo's attorneys in New York. confirmation received in his Metropolitan Correctional Center cell by 8 a.m. Eastern Time. His sons were safe, recovered, alive, but the orders hadn't changed at all. The active hit list was still fully operational. At noon on August 17, Sinaloa teams hit 13 more identified CJNG locations across 3 states, 13 more dead by 12:30 p.m. Final count, 116 bodies in exactly 48 hours. The Mexican government issued careful official statements about ongoing organized crime violence. The real story stayed completely suppressed, all retaliation for one kidnapping, one stolen watch. CJNG withdrew completely from all contested territories that afternoon. Plaza bosses fled to other states entirely. The organization that had boldly challenged Sinaloa's dominance was fundamentally shattered. The watch went immediately to a secure location in Culiacan, locked in a safe, kept permanently as a reminder. Freedom doesn't end the bill. By noon, August 17th, the killing had stopped completely, 116 dead in 48 hours. Sinaloa declared victory without saying a single word publicly. The bodies spoke for them. Mexican federal authorities held emergency briefings. President Enrique Peña Nieto called it unacceptable cartel violence requiring sustained military intervention, but offered no specific details about the kidnapping that had triggered everything. International media reported a sudden surge in organized crime deaths without understanding the precise mechanism behind it. The truth stayed locked inside. This was calculated punishment for one specific act. The gold Rolex sat in a safe in Culiacan, Sinaloa's heartland and power center. The engraving de tu padre, El Chapo, had survived everything. The violent kidnapping, the systematic violence, the message sending. It became a semi-legendary artifact within Sinaloa's inner circle, shown to high-level members as a direct lesson. Touch the family, face organizational extinction. CJNG pulled back from Jalisco border regions entirely, ceding territory they'd fought for over 5 years. El Mencho survived personally, but lost substantial power, authority, and territory. His bold challenge to Sinaloa dominance was answered definitively and permanently. The watch was never worn again, too symbolically valuable. It represented the precise price of crossing El Chapo, 116 lives in 2 days, the cost of touching El Chapo's family, 116 lives, August 2016 through present day. Jesús Alfredo and Iván Guzmán never spoke publicly about the kidnapping. No interviews, no official statements, no acknowledgement it even happened. The official story circulated among cartel intermediaries became simply misunderstanding between organizations resolved quickly. 116 deaths were dismissed in Mexican government reports as routine gang violence. The gold Rolex disappeared from public view entirely, kept in private Sinaloa collections as a permanent warning symbol. El Mencho survived the purge, continues operating CJNG to this day, but never attempted another direct action against the Guzmán family. The line was drawn. Prison calls between El Chapo and his sons continued through encrypted attorney channels. FBI monitored them continuously, documented vague references to the incident, filed detailed reports under seal. The August 2016 retaliation became instant legend in cartel circles, the story told to new recruits about why you never touch certain families. Federal prosecutors later used the incident as evidence of El Chapo's continued operational control from prison during his 2019 trial. He was convicted, sentenced to life plus 30 years. His sons continue operating Sinaloa interests. The watch remains somewhere in Sinaloa territory, engraving still readable. The best warnings are the ones nobody talks about. The gold Rolex sits in a private collection today, exact location unknown. The engraving de tu padre, El Chapo, remains clearly visible on the back. The story became Mexican cartel legend, Don't touch El Chapo's family. 116 deaths in 48 hours remain the record for single-incident cartel retaliation. El Chapo serves life in ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. His sons, Jesús Alfredo and Iván, continue running Sinaloa operations. CJNG still operates, but knows the line that cannot be crossed. The watch represents the final lesson. Power doesn't require freedom, only fear. It's not about drugs or territory, it's about family, pride, and the price of disrespect. The warning stands. Some prices get paid in blood, not money.
What would have happened if they'd returned him in 24 hours? Nobody wants to know.